do not conform to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And that's some pretty powerful wisdom and counsel. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, the conditions, the race consciousness, human race consciousness is what we're talking about, but be transformed by believing and renewing of your mind. And that is the expansive thinking that we talk about here at Joyful Gathering, a different way maybe, or an enhanced way of thinking, feeling, being, and doing. So what page out of the Science of Mind textbook do you think that was from?
First page.
No page. It is from Romans. It's from the Bible. It's from Romans chapter 12, verse 2 of the Judeo-Christian Bible. So for 28 days, we began last week, 28 days, we are engaged in doing some significant renewal and renewing. We are calling it our journey of transformation. The last week we got the 7 printouts, and today in your bulletin you'll get the next for this next week. 7 days of a spiritual practice, so that it's not just coming here on Sundays and being inspired, hopefully, but it's also a spiritual practice you do every day if you choose. So, 28 days of intentionally living in the energy of transformation that creates the expansion that we talk about in the moment, in that moment, and then that provides us with another moment of transformation, and then another moment, because we know, we talk about as spirit is always becoming more of itself through creation, because that is the activity of the divine mind of God, of spirit, is to create. So we too express our highest form of connecting and being divine beings by creating, becoming more of that which we already are and more of it. And so the transformation goes on and on and on. We transform. We don't stop. There's no place where we end. We become more constantly. So in addition to our, as I said, our time together on Sundays, this 28-day journey includes transformation daily. So the past week, you were called to break up the log jam. If you remember last week, it was all about, it wasn't all about, but it kind of got into this whole thing with the river and the logs. And when one log comes down the river and gets stuck, another one comes down the river and jams right there, and another one, until there's a jam. And that's how we are in our lives with our thoughts. We have one thought, and also with things that take place in our lives. We let something, we say, it's small, that doesn't bother me. I'll just suck it up, I won't respond to that at all. And then another one comes along, then another one. Before we know, we have a problem. This is how the problems get started in our lives. So it's about transforming and moving those problems out of our life. Well, we're not going to move the problems out, but at least to be in that flow, because the water is flowing anyway. So it's the living water of spirit is flowing anyway. Are we blocking it with our thought jams? That's the thing to look at here today. So we can break it up by transformation, and in that transforming of our thinking, we create space for the good, for the transformation itself to take place. Yes. And I know that we had practices, and one of them was to clear up some spaces in our house, so I began that myself. Did anyone begin any of it? Yeah. Oh, good. Yay. So yeah, and so it's moving in that direction, because you feel good. After you've cleared up some clutter, there's some room. There's some room for the newness to come through. In fact, our affirmation on one of those days was, through love and gratitude, I am returned to wholeness. Let's say that. Through love and gratitude, I am returned to wholeness. Yes.
Yes.
So the work that we did at home this past week was part of what we call this process of transformation. And we used the metaphor of the caterpillar and the butterfly being already present in the caterpillar. And the transformation, the metamorphosis that takes place as the caterpillar goes into the cocoon, into the chrysalis, and emerges as this butterfly. And so we use that as an example. If the caterpillar had taken a bunch of stuff with it into the cocoon, there wouldn't have been any room for the butterfly for it to be transformed into the butterfly, right? And that's what we do. We take all this stuff in the form of beliefs, in the form of things into our lives, and there's no room for newness, especially in our thinking. So today's time together is entitled The Call of Transformation. And just like the call of the butterfly that lives deep within the caterpillar, the call of transformation lives deep within each and every one of us. Something is calling you. Right here, right now. Something is calling you. Something is calling you to your next revolution around the spiral of evolution. Whether you know it or not. You don't have to know it. It's happening. And it's happening in ways that we might not even be aware of. But it is happening. I could go into so many things going on in my head right now with the transformation of that divinity that is within us. Okay, we have a divine essence that is eternal, that is within us, and that is perfect, whole, complete in every way possible. And then we have our human belief system operating at the same time. And so then we wonder, when we're not in alignment with that divine essence, why we are feeling off, why things are not going the way we pray for them to go, the way we intend for them to go. It's that contrast between what is, okay, the human experience, the divinity within us. There is a contrast if it's really out of alignment, and that's where the suffering is. That's where we suffer, because we know that there's a divinity within us. Whether we are consciously aware of it or not, it's there. That's what we believe in these teachings. That wasn't in my writing, but anyway. This is about the call. So in this call, I am aware that we can get pretty freaked out just by that, and uncomfortable by hearing, oh, there's a calling. I don't have a calling. What calling? And the reason we have those reactions is because we think that there is something huge, something big, something gigantic that we're supposed to do in this world. That's what a calling is. Only special people get a calling. And then we start comparing ourselves to those kinds of callings, when our calling does not have to be that way. It's our individualized calling.
Yes.
And yes, we have to get in touch with what it is. It could be a simple, beautiful act of kindness that changes someone else's life, and we're not even aware of how it changes their life. That's a calling. That's a calling. And we believe that if we can't figure out what the calling is, then we are a failure. Or we feel that if we figure it out, but we won't be able to do it, and then again we feel like a failure, because this whole subject of calling, transformation, this call of transformation, can be daunting. Does anybody get that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. If you've ever felt that, then I want to share with you this story from the master teacher, Jesus, that may help put it in perspective. I love this story. Jesus was one day in the temple and watching people as they gave their gifts and contributions. And there were those who were bearing these great gifts, great giving gifts, very high value in the world. And then there was a widow. Now in those days, being a widow was a pretty lowly thing. Widows were outcasts. They often had to sell their children to pay their debt. That's how widows were looked upon in the days, yeah. It was a very difficult way of life. So as Jesus was observing these people offering their gifts and contributions in the temple, the widow came to the altar, and it was clear that she had very, very little to give. Yet she had several mites in her hand. And they're not the mites you're thinking of. They're not those little insect things. Those live too, but mites crawling around. But that's not the kind of mites. It's a small, small amount of money. That's the context in this. So she had her little mites in her hand. Reminds me kind of like, yeah, when I was in England, when I grew up, 8 years there, we had farthings that they don't have anymore. It's a quarter of a penny. We have halfpennies, which was a half of a penny. You know, but this is a mite, which is even smaller than that. So the widow is said to have taken 2 of her mites and put them on the altar. And Jesus observed that she did this in a very loving and giving way. It meant so much to her, with so much love, that he called his disciples over and said, look at the others who give in ways the world would say is great. Yet she gives more this day than all those others added up. When you listen and respond to your call, which is the call of transformation, of becoming more of who you truly are, please don't measure it by what the world says is great, or what your parents might have said is great, or what your spouse or partner or friends may say is great, or even what your ego may say is great. But when your call is offered with love and heart, it is great in the way that God measures greatness. You are giving it from a place of love. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Always let us be in that process of renewal of our mind. Don't let us get stagnant in the way it's always been. And I don't usually quote actors or those in the entertainment field, but this story was pretty cool. Ashton Kutcher was on the Ellen DeGeneres show, and he spoke these words from a speech that he gave at a Teen Choice Award ceremony. So he's talking to the teens, and he says to them, I think that so much of what we see in the world today is this sort of propaganda machine around fame and around celebrity. And there are kids that grow up today thinking, I want to be famous, instead of, when I grow up, I want to do something. I want to build something. I want to create something. I want to make a difference on this planet. He said he thought that he had the perfect moment right where he was to actually let them know that fame and celebrity are pretty meaningless, and that working hard and being thoughtful and generous and smart is the path to a better life. Giving more of ourselves. You know, there's all this stuff going on, like he was saying, you know, on the TV, which I watch very little of, not just because I don't have time, because I really like TV. But, you know, I do, I like TV. But really, what I hear and what I read in my People magazine which is right next to my Science of Mind magazine. It is. I gotta read me some People. But it's all about these reality shows, which, you know, small are reality, really, and that's what the people, the young adults growing up today, the young kids, are seeing and emulating this fake reality of rich and famous, when you do something, build something, create something. And so there is another scripture I want to share with you this morning from Matthew chapter 22, verse 14, and you may have heard it before. Many are called, but few are chosen. You've heard that version. Okay. This is what it says in the King, that's what it says in the King James Version of the Bible. But in the original Hebrew, it said, or it was translated, many are called, but a few choose to heed the call. A little bit different. That's why all the Bibles are so different. We had that discussion in our, I don't know if it was we had an all-day workshop yesterday for the foundation class. It was phenomenal. But there are many different Bibles, and it's really, the interpretation is what you can really glean from these words. Not literally, but even metaphysically. Many are called, but a few choose to heed the call. Could this be because what they are talking about right now, that we don't think our call is big enough, worthy enough, significant enough? I'm going to wait for the big call. There's a big call, I'm missing it, I don't have it. Listen to some wise words here from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is what he said. If a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets, even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. To help to remind us that the call of transformation is really personal unto each one. And so take the big and little out of the equation. And you can feel it in your heart, because the heart will tell you what to do next.
Yes.
What act of kindness, what action, what activity to do next. So here we have, to help us remind ourselves of this transformation, what it really is, we have an acronym, which you know I love acronyms. So this one is CALL, creatively aligning with love's leading. Creatively aligning with love's leading. When we are answering our call, we are creatively aligning with love's leading. Love is leading the way. This can be done in the smallest or a huge way. It matters not. It matters not. It is the nature of the infinite to create. And we are the vehicles through which creation happens. You know, we hear this, that God expresses through us, and we don't sometimes get the depth of that, but it's very real. It's what we believe in these teachings. And so in a very real sense, at the point in the universe where we are, God needs our creativity, hear this, to do its work. God needs our creativity to do its work.
Yes.
We don't understand this. Maybe some of us do. Here's an example of what that looks like then. Like, no, not really. Yeah? You probably heard the story. Well, you probably heard this story. Well, I'll do that one next. But this one's even better. God could not create Antonio Stradivarius's violins without Antonio. Okay? Just to put it in context. God flowing and expressing through. Or this one, I know you've heard because I've told it before. The story of the farmer who was sitting along the side of the road when a traveling salesman stopped his car to ask directions. After receiving the directions, the salesman marveled out loud at the beauty of the farm that stretched before him. The crops were in perfect rows, robust and healthy. The salesman commented to the farmer, my, you are a blessed man. Look what God has done here. This is amazing. To which the farmer replied, yes, it is amazing now, but you should have seen the mess it was in when God had it alone. Right? We take the God stuff and we create our lives from it.
Yes, perfect.
Create beauty, yes, create beauty. Quantum physics says that the universe is ever expanding. And so, in you, there is a call, a pull to a greater expression of you. You can't deny it. It's pulling you, pushing you urging you, and eventually it will have its way with you, or else you will be in the suffering part. The creative urge is more powerful than any resistance, stronger than any holdback, more potent than any concern or feeling that you aren't worthy. The universe doesn't even recognize that thought. You aren't worthy. That's the human mind. That's the suffering mind. I am not worthy enough. Well, you are, because you were born into this creation as a unique individualization of God itself. God gets to express itself. Holmes talks about that God created life for its own delight, so that it can express through each and every one of us. That's the call we're talking about. That's the transformation of our thinking that we are talking about here. We pay attention to the little nudges to be in God's presence, to be God's presence, to be the creative urge to ever express more of who we are, and to answer the call. That's why it's so important to forget about loving yourself, as we talked about yesterday, but liking yourself. It's so important to like who you are first, to accept and like you with all of your gifts, and you have them, and all of your talents, and you have them. As you incline the mind toward love's presence, you will be aligned with love's impulse in you. It's the creative impulse. Then follow love's leading. When we say yes to our call, there is no place that love is not. And love, we know, might not know, but love is an encompassment of all the qualities of joy, of peace, of respect, of wholeness. Love is all of those qualities. It's not this, I don't know, this thing we've made up that it is, that doesn't really exist, but if it does, it's very transitory. So it's more than that. It's all the qualities of life itself. So the Persian poet Rumi said this: feel yourself being quietly drawn by the deeper pull of what you truly love. Feel that pull. Has anyone ever felt that pull to do something?
Yes.
Yes. And when you've done it, how did you feel?
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Because it is that universal spirit essence within us that is pulling us to become more of who we truly are. And it feels good when we do this. Let me illustrate that, but I have a story here that kind of goes with, it does go with this. It's a sweet story. So this is, little Jimmy was born with physical and mental deficiencies, but he had a great heart and spirit. His father helped him to learn, he taught him how to run. And though he ran in a very awkward way, he loved it. He loved to run. And one day Jimmy signed himself up for the Special Olympics. As he and his father were on their way to Jimmy's first race, the little boy said, I'm going to win this race. And his dad kind of worried, because he knew the degree of difficulty that his son had in running. And so he said, you know, Jimmy, it doesn't matter whether you win the race. What matters is that you are in it and that you tried your very best. Jimmy thought about that. That's all well and good. But he insisted he was going to win the race. His father tried again to convince him that winning wasn't the important thing here. But Jimmy insisted he was going to win. The gun went off, and the kids set out. And Jimmy immediately fell behind, because he really couldn't run very fast. He was trying valiantly to catch up when he heard a cry from behind him. A little girl, even slower than he, had fallen down and scraped her knee. So he turned around to help the little girl out. And one by one, the other children turned around to see what was happening. And they too turned around on the track, and pretty soon all the children in the race came back to Jimmy and the little girl, where they joined hands and ran across the finish line together. On his way home, Jimmy said to his father, "See, Dad, I told you I would win the race." So why does that story and stories like that, like I have God bumps all over me now, touch our hearts? Why do they touch our hearts? Even though we may have heard them over and over again. Because we resonate when we see the call, creatively aligning with love's learning, when we see the call being answered. It thrills me when I see someone's dream that they've held for so long become a manifestation. It's so inspirational to me. It makes me feel so good. It moves us, it touches us because it's right and it feels right. And when something feels right or is right, then it is the alignment of us with our true selves. So this week's work, which is in your bulletin, is to listen to the call. So to listen to how you are being invited. You don't have to look now. You can look when you get home. It starts tomorrow. To creatively align with love's learning. Most of the week will be spent just listening and being open to hearing. So it's really good stuff. I would encourage everybody to practice this if you choose, because it really does keep us in alignment every day. And an alignment means in the flow of life. So for now, let's anchor into your divine assignment this week, because we are not called for just one thing. As I said before, when one thing, then another thing, we're always becoming more. We're called many, many times in life. It's not just one thing. So if you like, you can close your eyes right now. We do a quick process. So we are called to a place where the love of God, the power of divinity, the presence of this divinity makes itself known. You are being called. Are you called to be a friend to the neighbor, the builder of a community, to be the prayer? Are you being called to be the giver? How are you called to the highest expression of God that you can be? You've been called for something more than just making it, more than just getting by, so much more. You've been called for a high intent and a holy purpose. You have been called for a holy purpose. In this moment, give yourself to the calling of something extraordinary in your life. And this week, be conscious to guidance. Be conscious and open to inspiration and to that high sense of a calling. For if you ask, it shall appear. It's already present within us. Let us open to this infinite good that truly is beyond all material stuff, beyond all of that inner call to be more than we can ever imagine that we are to be. But it takes first that first listen, and then we move, and then we move. And so I invite you to listen with your heart to the calling of love that is present as you, within you, and through you. And so it is.